Hi everyone, it's Friday, March 7th, 2014, and this is the Product Mentor. Today we're joined by one of our mentors, speaker Stephen Cohn, President and CEO of recently renamed and now called Validately, to lead a lesson on using Lean. So allow me to just briefly explain the format we've got here. So we'll be joined by mentors, mentees, and from a lot of the people from the larger product community. And if you have a question, ask it on Google Moderator. We'll be keeping an eye on that, and as questions are coming in, be happy to pass on those questions to Stephen. Stephen's got a little bit of a presentation prepared for us today where we'll be talking about using Lean, but we'll be jumping in at many times throughout the presentation to ask him questions and pick his brain on things Lean. So hey guys, everyone should wave hi. Hello, there we go. So what we're going to do very quickly is we're going to do some just very quick introductions. So we're going to start with Adrian, who's got a little bit of a reverb thing going on, so we'll bear with it. And remember, unmute yourself when you don't. So Adrian.
Hi everyone, my name's Adrian Tan. I work for a company called Brainmates. We're based in Sydney, Australia, and we're product management consultants and trainers.
Excellent. And Carlos?
Hey everybody, Carlos Kino. I make digital products. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and stakeholders and everybody who wants to make apps and technical stuff. So I've worked with Lean before, so I'm really excited to hear your perspective. Steve. Cheers up.
Stephen? Stephen?
Oh yeah, sorry. Steve Cohn. Should I just go into my introduction?
No, just do a quick intro.
Okay, I'm the founder of Validately. I've been a mentor in the program, and I'm looking forward to presenting a case study on how we use Lean to build my current company.
Excellent. And let's go to William, who's a frozen avatar. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm tethering off my phone today. I'm William Doyle Capitman. I'm a mentee in the program. I'm also a product manager at Dice.com, where we help tech professionals and tech companies find each other, and I'm based in San Francisco.
Excellent. And I'm Jeremy Horn, aka the Product Guy, and I'll be moderating tonight. And as I said, if you're on the productmentor.com/live, you can submit your questions to the Google Moderator channel, and we'll make sure that it gets over to Stephen to get all your awesome Lean questions answered. And with that said, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Stephen to talk to us about Lean tonight.
Great. So it's nice to virtually meet you guys. Obviously, if you're here on a Friday night, it's because you're really passionate about product and product management, and hopefully the topic of Lean. As way of background, I'm a multiple-time founder. I started my first company. I've done other things before I started a company, but I started my first company in 2007. I sold that in 2009 to Living Social, which we all know now is a big daily deals business. But when I sold my company to them, they actually were not in daily deals, and it was the acquisition of my company, and then what we did as a team to actually launch the daily deals product for them. So that was an interesting ride, and it turned out to be a financial successful exit. I started another company in 2011. It was a travel product. I didn't use Lean for either of my first or second companies, and I made a lot of mistakes with my second company. I overraised capital. Coming off the success I had with my first startup, I was able to pretty easily raise capital, so I raised more money than I should have. I overhired. I overbuilt a product. I built based on anecdote and conversations and my gut desire for the product, I did very little pre-build validation. and I felt like I got a lot of false positives. I felt like I burned way too much capital. At the end of the day, we had a product that had good engagement, but was not scaling at the pace I needed it to scale. So I sold it to TripAdvisor. It was, frankly, it was not a good financial outcome, but we monetized it a little bit and then started over as a team. And that, I call that a failure, frankly. And after that kind of failure, I did a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting on myself as a product manager, things that I was good at, things I was not good at, and what were some of the issues that drove this failure. I had more capital than I had ever had when I started the business, yet my first one was successful and my second one was not, and what was the cause of that? I became obsessed with this topic of false positives, and I felt like with my second startup, I got a ton of false positives, and with regard to features that I was going to build, and I became obsessed with this topic. Why do false positives happen in product management? How do you vet those false positives? How do you minimize the impact of false positives? And did a lot of thinking, did a lot of reading, and basically came to Lean as a practice. So I don't pass myself off as a Lean expert. I'm not a practitioner. I'm a trained Lean consultant. I'm just an entrepreneur that reads a ton about Lean. It tries to put it to work as best as I can. And I'm going to give you a very candid case study on what we did, as specific as you want it to be. So if you have specific questions, ask away. I'll give you as specific an answer as I can. I'm not going to hold anything back. So I'm going to open the kimono and say, this is what we did and why we did it and what kind of data we were seeing and what we were validating. And so that's what we're about to do. Is there any... before I get started on the actual presentation of the case study, any specific areas or questions that you'd like me to dig into that I can jump out to you?
Yeah, I think for this, just dive right in, and as questions or requests come across, I'll jump in and I'll pass them on to you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share my desktop now. Boom. Okay, can everyone see my desktop?
Yeah, we can
see the presentation now?
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Okay, great. Okay, so we started this process, what I call the pre-process, the first week of December of 2012, and I had done a lot of reflection, and I said, okay. I became to kind of believe like this is the right approach. So how do we institutionalize that and create a culture around it? And so the first thing I did was I actually gave the team, we skinnied the team down. There was only 4 of us, or 5 of us, I made everyone take some time off to actually read the Lean Startup. So we weren't coding anything. I had the engineers read it. I had the 2 business people read it. And so it was, the focus was getting the process right before you could get the process right, you had to all be on the same page. So everyone had to read that, and then we literally put down what I'm showing visually as our 10 commandments, but we literally documented rules of the road. Okay, we said, okay, what did you learn from reading the Lean Startup, right? And what are practices that we haven't done with our second startup that we want to now do because we're going to follow Lean in this, and we actually wrote them down, and I can't stress enough the importance of these 2 things as a bedrock if you're truly going to work on a team, and I'll tell you why. First, obviously the reading, everyone has to read the book. So when I talk to people who do Lean who know about Lean, and I say, have you read the book? And almost all the time they say, no, but I've saw some articles, and I saw like a webinar. I saw like Eric Ries speak one time, and so I think I get it. And my answer always is no. Like, just literally read the book. First of all, it's a page turner. It's not a heavy read. It's a bunch of case studies, and there's a lot of stuff that you get because by reading it, not only do you get the data, but you know, the anecdotes and the data and the stories, but your brain takes time to really think about it. So the actual act of taking that time to read the book helps you understand it at a deeper level and think about it. And then the second thing that I think is truly important is actually documenting it as a team, okay, into some basic rules. And the reason why you do this is because there are going to be times when you're going to want to fall into your old bad habits, okay? And there has to be, along with documenting these rules of the road, everyone had the power to call bullshit on something, okay? So if I, as the founder and CEO, you know, I joke almost like Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm an overbuilder. I love to build. I just love to build cool shit. I think technology is awesome. I think stretching the limits of what technology can do is cool, and I just like to build cool stuff. I do. That's just me. And while that might be interesting for parties, that's really not a good way to approach product management because you know, what we all affectionately refer to as normals are not like that. They want practical, they want simple, they want easy to use, and they want to solve a problem. And so just building for the sake of building without validation is like no number one. And as a product manager, that's my flaw. And so I wanted to document these rules because I wanted the team to be able to say, Steve, you're doing it again. Don't do this. That sounds like a great idea, okay? Most failures in product management sound like a great idea. The problem is what you as a team are so close to the problem. You're so close to the problem and the solution. And you know, first of all, everyone's biased that their ideas are great. So everyone thinks that their ideas are great. They're the greatest ideas in the world. Everyone thinks they're smart. But the reality is that most ideas are not great, or at least most ideas won't be accepted commercially, right? So the key thing here is not whether something is valuable or not in your eyes. It's a question of whether there's commercial viability to that idea. And there's really only one way to know that is to test it. And so you either test it after, you know, later down the road after you've done a whole lot of work, or you test it with using a lean approach. So I wanted to, if you document these rules of the road, and you give your team that power, right? So at any point, anyone on the team could say, bullshit, Steven. Any developer could say, bullshit, Steven. I'm not building this because I don't see data. I don't see proof that there's demand for this feature. And until I see proof that there's demand for this feature, I'm not going to write a line of code. Now, that's a culture shift, right? So in the past, in a lot of organizations, you know, there's a hierarchy and ideas come from the top, and you know, you're a developer. Here's a spec, build it, right? Well, that's not a lean approach from my perspective, and I don't think that's a good approach, anyways. Even though many companies build that way, and so you have to put some structure in place to empower the team to actually follow through with the core principles. If you do not, you will fall back on your old habits, and pretty soon you'll dilute the whole thing to the point where it's not really lean. It's probably actually a worse version than your other approach. Okay. So that now we had the rules of the road, and then we started with this ideation.
I just want to jump in right there for just a brief moment. You were talking a little bit about lean. We have from Anna, one of the people who's just submitted through the Google Moderator channel, had a question for you. And her question is kind of a little bit more about the history and the background, and what process did you use before you used lean?
So Whoa, holy smokies. How do I... there we go.
That's exciting.
Okay, there we go. You can see my face now?
Yes,
Would you guys rather see the presentation than my face? So what process did we do? I think a very traditional startup process, very founder-driven, very guru-driven. Like when you're a founder, it's so funny for people who don't start companies. They always think it's like it starts with this idea that you have in the shower, or that you get hit in the head and you have this brilliant moment of clarity. But the reality is, startups start with a problem, not an idea. But then there's this problem that you start with, and then you, as a founder, typically, kind of the old school model is the founder envisions, is this great visionary that envisions this elegant solution to this problem that he's sure, or she is sure, everyone has this problem, and therefore his or her elegant solution is going to be this amazing solution. And the point is that there's a ton of assumptions in that whole thing. There's assumptions on that everyone shares, that a commercially viable segment of the population shares that problem, and it truly thinks it's a problem that needs to be solved, and then that your solution, or the features that encompass your solution, are actually valuable, right? And so those things are typically founder-driven, hunch-driven, and the idea of, I want to keep this behind a gate, right? So we gate these things so people can't get in, because God forbid someone sees an early version that's terrible. Your reputation is going to be destroyed, and they're never ever going to use your product, no matter how good your product is, right? The concept that even if you have an amazing product, because they saw a terrible version 12 months ago or 6 months ago, they're just not going to use this amazing product now. Is become dogma, but I think it's just horseshit, really. But that's become this thing. That's why people put up gates, because I want to keep this. I want to keep my creation behind. I don't want to expose my creation until it's ready. And so that there's this culture of this top-down, founder-led, hunch-driven, elegant solution that's untested. And frankly, I think that's a huge reason why startups fail, because it's really, really, really hard to guess the solution right. And so once what happens is you end up guessing it wrong more times than not. If you're not using a lean approach, an iterative approach, you put it out, and you figure out what's wrong as soon as you put it out. It takes you a couple months to figure out and talk to customers and figure out why it's not working. And by then you're often out of money, or close to out of money, and you run out of money before you're able to fix it. So that's the answer to the question.
Cool. And we have one other question from Carlos in that deep red colored square right there. So Carlos, Let me hand it over to you so you can ask your question.
Yes.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so you were speaking that you had some habits that you fall back on. Like, what was just out of my curiosity, what was the worst one that kept popping up or reappearing?
I love to build. I love to build shit. I love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's so much fun to build cool things that make you go, wow. But at the end of the day, what I've learned is making it go wow, okay, having a beautiful design that goes wow, is enough to get signups, but it's not enough to get usage and continue engagement. And at the end of the day, you have to solve, I believe, this is my philosophy, that you have to solve a problem, and that problem has to be recurring enough to be able to monetize and be commercially viable. Just because you like to build something and it looks cool doesn't mean that it's actually providing value to people. So obviously, if you can do both, that's great. But it's hard when you the thing I've learned is it actually takes time, a lot of time, to make something look awesome. You not only do designers need the time to make things look awesome, and to really keep flushing that out, but then to code it, it takes a lot of time to get the coding of like really slick interactions. Takes a tremendous amount of time, and you can't use Bootstrap and stuff like that. And so the combination of the two, to go from this is cool in a prototype to actual production-worthy code, eats up a ton of time if you aren't validating, and if you just build because it's cool. And that is my biggest flaw as a product manager. I like technology. I think it's cool.
Cool. And I just have to say, I like how Carlos is joining us from his pillow fort at home. I think that is very exciting. Actually, I was just about to hand it back to you for the presentation, but another question just came in. So let me take a moment and read the new question that just came in. So this is a question from Sam. Wow, it's a long one. I should have read it first. So Sam from New York City says, your bio says you attended Harvard Business School. Did you learn anything there that complements or synergizes with the lean approach that you could share with us?
So so Harvard's doing a lot of stuff with lean. When I was at Harvard, the concept of lean wasn't out there. There was a couple of things that I learned from Harvard Business School. One of which was a book called Crossing the Chasm. And I don't know if you guys have ever read Crossing the Chasm, but I'm a big fan of it. And it was before there was Lean Startup. This was the Bible for startups and venture capitalists and stuff like that. And we actually took a full course on it and really dug in deep. And the concept is how to scale from your early adopters, your innovators, your early adopters into the early majority, and that's where the chasm is. The chasm is between the early adopters and the early majority, and the many products don't cross that chasm. They end up getting some early traction from some startup early adopter types, but never really cross into the mainstream. And they give you some tactics and stuff like that to do it. So I would highly recommend that book and digging in. You learn a lot of value out of that. I learned a lot on strategy at Harvard Business School, competitive strategy, product strategy. That I thought was very valuable, very applicable, and product marketing too. So yes, there were several things that I. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I think you did. So we actually have no more questions at the moment, so feel free to continue where you left off.
Okay, let me switch back to presentation mode. Do you see my presentation now?
Yep.
Okay. So now we have the rules of the road. The next thing we did was an ideation process. There's actually a great article by Paul Graham on how to get it's a very long article. It was written by Paul Graham, who I guess you guys all know is the founder of Y Combinator, which is one of the best, is probably the best incubator out there. He goes through how to pick an idea for a startup, and it's a great read. And there's some rules of the road there, and so we read that, we documented the rules of the road, and then started a process as a team to come up with the idea that the problem that we wanted to solve. I give the picture for American Idol because I kind of acted as Colin, and one of the kind of rules that he gives in his essay, which is very good, is that the founder has to strongly empathize with the problem and that you want to solve. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, as sad as it is, employees come and go. Even senior employees come and go, but the founder doesn't, unless there's a real problem with the company. And the founder is the lead evangelist. So you can't evangelize a product if you don't really truly connect with it and are passionate about it. So the founder has to really connect with it. So what we did with the ideation process is I gave everyone a day to go away from work and come up with problems, real problems that they had, that they thought there's no good solution for right now. To do some research to make sure there was no good solution, that needed that it was a real pain that they wanted solved, and then come back, and then they basically put one slide together for each problem that they thought was a good idea, and they pitched it to me, and we would debate it and discuss it, and go from there. And I gave them 24 hours because the truth is you don't really need more than that, because if it's truly a pain point, it should come top of mind, right? If it takes a long time to figure out an idea, then it's not really a pain point. But the other key thing with this thing is, like, I'm gonna give you an example. One person came with an idea I thought sounded like a good idea. The idea came from his wife. She said a big frustration of hers is that she never really she has all this stuff in her closet, and she has trouble every morning figuring out what to wear and how to put things together and do all that stuff. And she would love some sort of consultancy, and if she can get some sort of stylist, she would even pay for that monthly subscription where the person could look at her stuff and kind of tell her in advance, why don't you try this combination tomorrow and he was pitching it, and there was a lot of heads nodding, and I said, I think that's actually is a good idea and a problem I think I could see people having, and I could see a way to monetize that, and I see a way to test that and validate that. The problem is I wouldn't hire me to run that company, and I'm the founder, so that's a great idea that someone else should start, right? So maybe someone else should start that, and if you want to go start that with your wife, you can go do that, but I'm the founder. I put a lot of my own money in this. I raised the capital, and I couldn't run that business. So you have to have the founder has to be really emotionally connected. But what did come out of this is actually one of our lead developer at the time came up with an idea that was actually very, very similar, independently of an idea and a pain point that I had as the founder. What was good about that is while we went through this process, the reality is that there was a lot of buy-in because Noah actually pitched the idea, and I said I think it's a great idea. I have a very similar slide, and that became we went through this process, and that became the genesis of Validately. And now it might seem like a whole lot of process to just pick one of the ideas that the founder had, but the reality is that by letting the team kind of go through this process with us, they came to an idea that was very similar to mine anyways, and there was therefore a lot of buy-in. And Noah was actually pitching it, and there was a lot of people saying, yes, that's a great idea, before I even said this is my idea. And it was actually a pain point that we had with my second startup. So then we said, okay, this sounds good. Now let's validate this in the market. And we set out to use our network to talk to people who are practitioners in the specific field that we had and that we wanted to address. And we said, this was a problem that we had. Do you have this problem also? Okay, and why have you not solved it? And how have you how do you solve it now? And we basically use that as a way to test the pain point, right? And figure out and make sure. Now the key thing here is it's a first pass, right? So this is not, you don't take interviews for customers and then say, okay, problem solved, let's go build something great, right? This is a kind of a, you know, a sniff test, if you will. Like, does this smell right? Like, you know, talk to a bunch of people who you respect, who are from different companies and different, you know, when you do this, you know, the lean startup talks about archetypes, okay? And what an archetype is literally a skeleton of a specific customer. So let me give you a good example. I mean, like probably the most quintessential example is you know, is the Target mom, right? So you know, marketing teams put together these archetypes of potential customers, and they name them. So marketing Mary and you know, CFO Bill and whatever it is, whatever your product is, and you name it, and you say, okay, this is a person that could buy our product. And you have different archetypes, right? So someone from a big company product manager, like Viacom, would be a different archetype than from a startup product manager, right? So just raised their Series A. So that it doesn't matter that they're both male, they're both or they're both female, and they're both 32 or 35 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what their age is. It doesn't matter that they're both in New York City. It doesn't matter that they have the same income. What matters, like the key criteria that separates the two, is one's at a Series A company startup, and the other one's at a big, you know, big company. So, so you put your archetypes, you do your interviews, and you're looking for patterns. You're looking for consistency, and you're looking for validation that this is a pain point that many people have, and that they want to solve problems with. They want to actually get solved. So the key thing when you're talking to people, there's the old saying in product management, what people say and what people do are two different things. And so the thing you have to be wary of is never putting too much stock in what somebody says. You have to ask for some form of commitment from your person you're interviewing. Now, in my opinion, there's three forms of commitment of increasing importance. The first one is your time. So are you willing to give me more time to see a solution of this? And if the answer is no, then it's really not a pain point. If the answer is yes, then we have found a pain point that you really are committed to solving. The second level escalation is, are you willing to use your reputation? Meaning, when we have this follow-up meeting, are you willing to invite others to participate and do it? Are you willing to recommend to other people that they talk to me as well? Right? Use your reputation to validate. And then the highest form, obviously, is financial. So are you willing to prepay for a solution? And you can actually do that. You can actually sell, you know, contract, you know, payment on delivery for a specific solution. So the key thing when you do these interviews is not just take people's word for it. Okay? So when I would do these interviews, I would literally at the end of everything, I'd say, okay, well, we're going to put together a prototype of a solution. Are you willing to set up a meeting with me right now while we're on the phone to see this prototype? Yes. Okay. Can you pull up your calendar? I actually think let's book something for February. What about the first week of February, right? So, you know, and go through that process literally before you hang up the phone. Not get a, yeah, sure, I would totally see something. Just shoot me an email when you're ready. No. That's not a commitment. That's a blow-off. What you want is literally, I want to be in your calendar before we hang up the phone. And by putting that pressure on, okay, and I know a lot of product people are uncomfortable with that. That's part of my sales training, made me more comfortable with that. I worked in sales at IBM at one point in my career, early in my career. And they train you that. They train to actually make a meeting, not hypothetically, not yes in the future, but literally before you leave a meeting, book the next meeting. Okay? And the reason why you do that is because that does put pressure on, and that's the reason why most people feel uncomfortable doing it, but that also validates that they truly want to meet with you. And that pressure is your friend. You want that pressure. Okay? And so that's what we did. We literally set meetings, and we said, okay, that's good. So now we want to think about what a possible solution is, but we want to actually get more data. Okay, so we put together a working name for the product. We called it ProdThink, And we did what I think was what I consider our first MVP, which is literally a landing page. We created this ugly landing page on launchrock.com, which is you can create a landing page very, very quickly for free. And it was ugly, right? We called it Customer Feedback Management from Suggestion to Production. We had a couple of value statements here. And what we tested was, okay, so those were people, we first had those conversations with people we knew or had some sort of connection, right? Now we wanted to see if we could actually drive leads, cold leads, people who we didn't even know, into a sign-up form, have them put their name in there, give us their email address, and then follow up with them, sign up for a quick demo to learn more, right? And follow up with them to see if we could actually get them to take a demo. Now, to be clear, we didn't have anything built yet. We did not build anything yet. All we were doing was validating that the pain point was enough to get meetings with people to see a demo for a brand they've never even heard of because it was just created a couple weeks earlier. Okay? And we did it with relationships first and then with cold lead gen tactics. Very basic, we did targeting and LinkedIn, etc. Okay? And so what we're doing along the way is we have hypothesis that we're testing. And literally what we did from the beginning is once we had the idea, before we even got to this first MVP, we set off, after the interviews, we sat down and we literally documented the hypothesis that we felt needed to be validated to solve a specific problem. Needed to be validated to make our solution commercially viable, right? So you have a set of hypotheses that's it's a very lean thing, and you should document them. You should literally write them down as a team, and then as a team review those hypotheses and say, yeah, well, actually, and then say, how are we going to test these hypotheses? Okay. Again, you haven't built anything, and also, again, your engineers are a part of this process. Your engineers are working with you. They're sitting in the interviews. Okay. They're recapping with you after you have the interviews. In some cases, they're doing the interviews on their own without you there. And so that helps get buy-in. That helps validate things, and it also, product managers. What happens is we oftentimes get a strong vision of what the solution. You start to get a vision early on of what a solution would look like, and you got to fight that. And having a second set of ears in the meeting, and third set of ears that says, actually, I didn't hear him say that at all. I didn't hear her say that. I heard her say X, right? Because sometimes we hear what we want to hear because we have this vision of a solution and we want to, start with the answer and fit the data into the answer. So this was our first MVP, and again, we were testing the value statement with a very ugly thing that we threw together in 15 minutes, but we actually got a pretty good conversion rate off of this. I think the conversion rate, like, we were able to drive sign-ups at like $30, $40 a meeting, which for B2B, we were happy with, but we were spending very little money. So we were spending like $50 a day, and we were probably getting more than one meeting because we were also using our networks to market. So we were getting like 2 or 3 meetings a day with a $50 a day budget. Okay. So, any questions, Jeremy? I should keep going.
Actually, yeah, we just had a question come in. Perfect timing. So this question comes in from Carolyn X in New Haven. And it's another long one, so that's why I'm looking off to the side, not the camera. So to follow up on the point, you need data to support that there are needs for the product. What kinds of data do you need? For example, Steve Jobs' team created innovative products not to solve a problem, but to improve multiple industries.
So here's the thing. With all due respect to everyone on this call, there's no one on this call who's Steve Jobs. You're not as good as Steve Jobs. I'm not as good as Steve Jobs. So that's like saying, you know, using Michael Jordan as an example of how a great how everyone else should play basketball. There's no Michael Jordan. So and there really aren't many Steve Jobs in the world, or people even come close to that. There's maybe once a decade there's a person like that. It's very rare. So if you're Steve Jobs, if you're as good as Steve Jobs, and again, I think you have to be honest with yourself, figure out whether you really are. Probably if you're learning at, you know, it's just unrealistic that we're Steve Jobs here, right? So if you're that good and you are truly an amazing visionary, then you can guess, and you're going to get. You know, Steve Jobs had a share of failures, but he's so good that he was able to, you know, guess right enough times. But what Lean is for the rest of us who aren't Steve Jobs, and so you know, I include myself in that. I don't pretend that I'm that good. So then the other part of the question was, what validation do you need? And I answered that, which was you need some sort of commitment from the person, from the customer, from the potential customers that fit within a specific archetype. And the commitments are in three forms, in my opinion: your time, your reputation, or your money. So if you can't get a commitment of your time, of your customer's time, reputation, or money, then you haven't validated anything. And so but I think the biggest mistake most startup people do, or product managers do, is that they don't even ask for that commitment, because it's uncomfortable to ask for a commitment from a customer. So you have to get over that, because if you don't, you're going to chase a lot of false positives, in my opinion.
Cool. So we have another question from Aju, New York. How much do you worry about your idea being stolen, if at all, when you socialize your product idea outside the team, your team or company for validation?
Yeah, it's a great question, because it comes up all the time. It's so funny when you meet a first-time entrepreneur, and I get pinged all the time from entrepreneurs, because I'm like, in some of my circles, I'm like the only entrepreneur that they know. So anytime someone says, "Hey, I have an idea, I'm starting it," they all say, "Yeah, you should talk to Steven." And so I talk to a fair amount of entrepreneurs, and it's so funny. A lot of them will be like, "Hey, will you sign an NDA for this idea?" And of course, the answer is no. And frankly, it's a sign that the person is probably going to fail and has no idea what they're doing. Ideas are meaningless. Completely, utterly, I'm gonna curse to make an emphasis. Fucking meaningless. Okay? This concept that you have an idea that is worth something.
Just a higher rating now.
Yeah. I think that this concept that you have an idea that is somehow worth something is so preposterous and founded in nothing that it's just a sign that you, frankly, don't understand how to build product, because ideas are just a dime a dozen. People don't buy ideas; they buy solutions to problems, and so the execution is everything. And frankly, your execution at the early stage is terrible. So I'm going to get into the MVP in a second, but the point of an MVP is not to have the answer; it's to find out what is missing. So what is wrong with the product? The reason why you want to put out MVPs as quickly as possible is to validate or invalidate hypothesis and find out why, when you invalidate something, why? What is the reason? So the answer when you ask for a customer to sign up and pay, getting no from your early versions is more valuable than getting yes. Okay? And the reason why is because you want to find out the reason why they say no. And so only through doing that are you going to find a great solution. And it's the solution that creates the barrier to entry. It creates the competitive differentiation and the competitive barrier to entry for anyone else. it's not the identification of the problem. And so, no, and it's certainly not the idea. Hey, I have this idea. I want to build this social network for cat lovers. Like, you know, it doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't mean anything. I don't care what your idea is. But Mark Zuckerberg's idea was already had huge competitors in place when he had this idea, this brilliant idea. And it wasn't even his idea. He stole the idea. So, you know, it doesn't matter. It's the execution. It's the product. And so don't worry about people stealing your ideas. Now, I know there are big companies who care deeply about this. Yes, social network for cat lovers is Reddit. So I know there are people who big companies who care deeply about this. They keep everything behind a walled garden. They never share their ideas. There are some great companies who do this. Amazon is an example. Apple, you can't even, you know, have this very kind of thing. So there's a couple of examples that consistently produce great products. They have a big internal team that does dog fooding. I mean, by the way, Google doesn't do this. Google, everything's out in the open. They have a Google Labs. They do internal stuff. They don't care. We're going to iterate fast. We're going to build a defensible barrier once we find a solution that's going to work, right? And by the time you figured out that we found something that works, we'll have already created this defensible barrier. So, you know, Google's about this. Intuit. I mean, you know, there's a lot of big companies that do this. I think frankly, there's more big companies that have mediocre and failed products because they hide their ideas behind a curtain than the opposite. They're so worried about, like, you know, what if a competitor sees my, you know, my UI, you know, 2-3 weeks before I release it? I mean, what if? But I just think it's way overblown. So ideas are meaningless. Punchline.
Very cool. That's all the questions we have right now, so let me just hand it back.
All right, let me switch back. I'm sorry if I went a little over the top there. I didn't mean to get all. It's a thing that comes up so many times, and I wanted to emphasize strongly how I felt. All right, so. Sorry, my computer's going slow. Okay, can you see me?
Yep, all good.
Okay, but for some reason I can't page forward here. Present. My Chrome is frozen here. Sorry, I'm not sure why my Chrome is frozen here.
Completely frozen. That's exciting.
Oh, now is my everything frozen here?
Are you able to click on any of it?
No. Let me open up.
We're in a glitch-filled evening, aren't we?
Yeah. Okay. The Firefox opened for me. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here. Chrome is completely messed up. Now I can't get back to the.
I'm going to post the URL to your presentation if you want to just talk along. Everybody else can read it.
Okay, let me. Okay, I'm back. I think I'm back here. I think.
We can see your Google Docs screen if you're able to.
Did you see where it says first MVP?
Yep.
The problem is I can't toggle through.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna.
Jeremy, you could share.
Let me go to this. I'm gonna
with the
put this
public.
on. Let me put my thing on sleep for a second, and then open it back up. And I know you're gonna lose connection for me for a minute, but I'll hopefully won't get kicked out of the room. I apologize, guys. I don't know any other suggestion to. So give me a second here.
So as we're waiting for for Stephen to come back, and it looks like we've got some more questions. I don't know if there's any other questions in the room, but I see someone by the name of Dan from New York says, "How do you determine a good model to follow?" I'd answer that question myself, Dan. I'm not sure I exactly know what you mean by good model. If you could elaborate or post a question with a little bit more detail, I'd be happy to speak to that. Also, speaking back to one of the questions that got asked earlier about Steve Jobs not solving problems, I think when you're thinking about what Steve Jobs actually did and what he was trying to do, a common misconception is that Steve just kind of conjured ideas into his head and just started inventing, and we all loved it. He actually did a lot of customer research, spoke to a lot of customers, and identified problems. People might forget. Sure, we all had cell phones back then, but we didn't really like them that much, and there was definitely an enjoyment factor that was a problem, that was missing, that Steve Jobs did identify uniquely, to his credit, and what Apple was able to do. But there was definitely still a problem that was being solved, and it came out of a lot of data and a lot of research that I think he was kind of uniquely wired to be able to identify and be able to fix there, as history has kind of shown. Let's see, any other questions? I'm just checking over here. Any questions from the room, from Adrian, David, William? I think we've learned tonight that Stephen's computer is a little bit possessed. Apologize to everyone, but that's why we started a little bit late tonight. Everyone was able to get in except for Stephen, but don't worry, we'll get him back in just a moment. Let's see here. Waiting for him to come back. And again, if anyone is in the Google Moderator channel, we're happy to answer any questions you guys may have. I don't know if anyone's been following the news recently, but I've been watching the Satoshi Nakamoto story from Newsweek. Apparently people are now chasing him all over California, trying to get him to profess his creation of Bitcoin. A little controversial there, but definitely a lot of fun to be watching. And just now got another question in from Courtney from New York City. She's asking, what advice do you give to someone without a business or tech background, but have validated a problem that is specific to an industry, film production, and wants to move forward to build it? What is the next step after validation? Well, when you're going through a lot of the lean process and you're validating your ideas, you're never done with just one validation. I think there's a great organization that's kind of all over the place that I've had the pleasure of working with and being a judge for, a Lean Startup Machine. and they really kind of help you structure a lot of that lean process. And the way part of what Lean Startup Machine does when you work through the Lean Startup process is you're identifying risks, and basically what you're doing is the first thing you're validating is that riskiest risk. And so just because you might have validated the problem, you definitely have a lot more validation to do, from validating customers and different customer segments, different solutions, of course, identifying and validating those. And there's really pretty far you can get in validating this and kind of building something, just using a lot of the free tools that are online. So I think usually if you're saying typically if someone says they validated just one problem, there's plenty more to still validate before you want to fully dive all the way in.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
Hey, Stephen. I'm told I'm just finishing up answering a question. And so when you are validating, you definitely want to validate. You want to be testing not just a problem and validating that, but you want to be validating the solution, validating the market, and really identifying what your riskiest risks are. And working your way through them and validating them kind of one by one as you kind of hone in on that problem. And as you validate or invalidate things, what you often hear is you pivot into new ideas, new markets, new solutions. So I definitely recommend you continue with a lot more of those risks and using a lot of the free tools that are available online. Stephen, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know if we lost anyone. If not, you guys are champs for sticking with us.
I kept them entertained. I started reading some technique.
Okay, good. All right, let me share my screen here. Man, this is so buggy. I'm on a Mac in Chrome, and on Google Hangout. It's okay. You see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So now we can do it. Did we lose anyone?
We're all good. We're all with you.
All right. All right. So then, so again, at this point, we're just validating the key hypothesis is that this is a problem that wants to be solved, and we're validating this by getting people to actually sign up and take meetings and give us their time. That's the first level of commitment.
Your presentation just disappeared on us.
Awesome.
So we're watching you rock out in your chair right now.
Okay. Let's try this again. Desktop. Start screen share. You see my thing now?
Yep, all good.
Okay. All right. So now we had a whole bunch of people sign up. We didn't have anything. We didn't have anything built yet, so we scrambled. So we had a whole bunch of people who said, "Yeah, I'll take a demo because I'm interested." And so we basically we did a single purpose. It wasn't a product; it was a feature. Okay. And that was driven off of a hypothesis, right? So the hypothesis that we were testing was that it was too hard to validate features before you build them, and that there needs to be an easier solution. And so what we said was, let's start with this, what we call a feature page, okay? And the feature it could be images, it can be a video. You can make a video of your feature, or anything like that, almost like a Kickstarter type of thing. So it was a concept that actually was off of a Kickstarter page, and then you could just have that one page. You could put it in front of customers and get reaction. You can ask questions and different things like that. Now we didn't think this was the answer, but we wanted to just basically put this in prototype in front of people and get the reaction. And the reaction was that this was not the answer. They hated video. They did not want to create a video that was too time consuming. No one would do that. Forget it. Video was just a non-starter. Sounds cool, but never. Concept of asking people questions was very frowned upon. No one wanted to really. Questions are kind of important, but we kept hearing over and over. It's not what people say they're going to do, but it's what people do. That's what I need to test. Okay. So what people say and what people do are different. How do I test? I want to be able to test what people do, not what they say, right? And that's just kept coming up over and over again. So this MVP flopped in that it wasn't a solution. It was successful in that we heard consistent patterns of what was needed. So we went away and said, okay, we heard some consistent patterns. We can build that. So we built it, and then we came up with a next version. Now we used Bootstrap, and as you could tell, it had we focused a little bit on UX, but none on visual design. So we used Bootstrap, and we just basically did this. So we had a couple of different things that you can do, a way to add feedback, and we were testing and we were doing, and because we kept hearing one of the pain points we kept hearing over and over again. If you go back to like the first MVP, was the pain point we kept hearing from product management was that I have so much ideas and things like that. They're all over the place. I have surveys here, and I have Google Docs there, and I have emails, and I have all this stuff, and it just is such a pain point for having all these different tools, all these different things. And so, then we put together a solution that you can kind of not only get feedback, but also consolidate feedback from other sources. Okay, and so this add button over here. So request kicked off a survey. We hadn't yet solved the problem of how do I see what people do versus what they say they're going to do, but that was coming. But so request could kick off a survey, and then add could help you import stuff from like emails and other things like that. And this is the first example of what people say they want and what people actually want are two different things. Because when we gave them a way to actually consolidate different emails, threads, we had like an email tool. You can email stuff in and it would consolidate, and then you could import Google Docs, and then you could do different things. People didn't want that. Even though that's what they said they wanted, people didn't really want it because it ended up creating more work. We actually called that Salesforce for product managers, and it ended up creating more work than people wanted. So when we put this, we kind of threw together a solution that allowed you to consolidate the three things that kept coming up that were a pain. I got emails all over the place. I have docs and notes and stuff like that all over the place, and I have surveys. So we had a survey tool, and then we had a way to import emails and docs, and it was rolled up by feature, so you could drill down and see all the data and see. We actually imported this metrics column was Google Analytics. So you can actually import Google Analytics for a certain feature, and we had like votes, so you can get voting and stuff like that. We put this in front of people in April, and it was not the right solution. But the good thing here is, look, this is the date April. Okay, our first MVP was in February. We learned what we heard from people what they wanted. We put something together in March, and then within 30 days we were testing another version of a solution. Okay, a little bit more, definitely more advanced than that first version, but still not a full product. It was really still around a single use case, and it wasn't elegant. It wasn't beautifully designed. It was a utility that we were trying to figure out if by putting this in front of people and asking them, will they pay for it now? Learning why they wouldn't. Right. So getting no fast is really important. Is really important. So, and that brings me to kind of an important point, I think, for product teams, because product managers, very often hate the sales process. They'll go on sales calls, but they oftentimes think it's a pain in the ass, and in organizations I've been in big organizations, oftentimes there's a misunderstanding. Product doesn't always understand why sales can't sell stuff and stuff like that, and it's just there's in a lot of cases there's a natural discomfort with a selling, and most of the time it's like, well, I'm not a sales guy, I'm a product guy. And in B2B, I'd say that's not acceptable. Not that you have to carry a bag and a quota and a territory, but I do think you need to understand objectively the funnel, and do that when you're building, because at the end of the day, there's many reasons why things are not commercially viable, and it's not all about the product. Sometimes, as even the great Steve Jobs learned, sometimes you can have a great product that's mispriced, or that the sales cycle is too long, or that you pick the wrong market. And the only way you can do that and figure that out at the early stages is to be at the forefront with customers. Okay, and so if you want to be a product manager in a B2B, you have to be comfortable selling. I mean, I was at a mentor program on a different thing a while ago, and there was a guy who was running a B2B. He's like, I need to hire a VP of sales, and it was like a 3-person company, and they had one customer or 2 customers, and they were selling like these very expensive, implementations. So they only had like 2 or 3 customers. Like VP of sales, like, well, I'm not really good at sales, and I want someone who's good at sales, and that's my biggest pain point. I need to solve that. And I was like, no, at this stage, it's not acceptable to just punt on sales and not understand the funnel metrics because you're not comfortable with it. You need to get over that. You need to understand how things work through a funnel, what the sales cycle is, why the sales cycle is what it is, and understand how that impacts pricing, and how that impacts the organization that you're doing. And so it's the same thing, I think, with development. You don't have to actually code, but you have to really get a good sense of what is involved with building a specific solution. And so everyone's comfortable with that, right? But we're not comfortable with being in front of the customer and understanding the sales side of it. And I think that that's a huge mistake. You have to understand the funnel metrics. It will absolutely positively impact the commercial success, the potential for commercial success of your product.
Hey, Steve, we just had another question come in.
Yeah, I'm not going to toggle back and forth, by the way, because that caused problems, so I'm just going to stay here.
You're full of the Google. Okay.
Yeah.
So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Perry Luigi, I think, or some Pierre Luigi from Brooklyn. I apologize if I hurt that name. And the question that was asked was, can Lean be introduced? Has it been introduced to larger established organizations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, we did a webinar where we had on our blog for my company, validately.com/blog. There's a video of a chat that we just did with the person who's actually the first designer for Eric Rees at IMVU, and she's Laura Klein, does a ton of stuff and a ton of speaking, and she actually did a webinar 2 weeks ago for us that we videotaped and put it on our blog on that exact topic. And so the punchline is, I think there's 3 kind of approaches. There's the, I'm a single product manager and I want to do this, but no one around me even knows what it is or that they want to do this. What do I do? The second is, management thinks it's interesting. They asked me to lead a pilot project, and I've got a small team, and what do I do? And then the third is like full-on implementation. Everyone's got religion. Everyone's ready to do this. How do we get started? How do we do that? And Laura actually goes through some tactics. So if you're interested in that specific thing, I would actually recommend you go, because the answers are significant. Go to validately.com/blog, and it's actually the video. I think it's the top video right there. Where you'll see the video, and you can watch it. And Laura's terrific. Okay.
Excellent.
Next question.
Yeah, that's all the question at the moment. The other question was, are we going to have more live streams? Yes, and they will also have a few less technical glitches as well. And thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. With
Yeah.
that, let me just hand it back to Stephen.
Yeah. Okay, so as you're going through this and you're talking to customers and you're in the front and you're putting this product in front of people, what you're doing, a lot of people, the buzzword is the pivot, and pivot sometimes I think gets a bad rep. It's like almost like, oh, they pivoted, and that must be bad, like they must be failing, must be in trouble. The reality is that I think I heard Jeremy talking about this as I was coming back on, is that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing in this part of the process, okay? What you're supposed to be doing is, the point of putting out an MVP in front of customers is because you can only validate so much, is testing what they want to do, like testing what they want, and seeing what they have when they have something in front of them. Okay, seeing how they respond, and you have to listen to it. You have to be willing to listen and adjust your product accordingly, and your value statement and what you're trying to do. And the key to that, in my opinion, is looking for patterns. So we would never build something unless we heard it by at least a dozen, if not 24 times, consistently from customers. We need this, and if you're doing it right, you'll actually hear the same explanation, verbiage from customers. Like you'll hear them describe what they want the same exact way. And when you hear that over and over, you're like, okay, now we're on to something here. And I think that you can only get there by putting early versions in front of them, because people, when they respond to a prototype or an early version and they see it visually and they click around and they try it, that's when they can truly start to get at what they really mean, what's underlying this pain point that they have. Okay, and very frequently the way they describe it initially is flat out wrong, which is why you don't want to overbuild before you validate. Because what happens is that you interview people, you go off your hunch, you build what they say, and you overbuild what they say, and it takes you a long time, and then they say, oh, actually that's not really what I meant, right? And you could have validated that with 2 weeks worth of development work or even less, right? By even a clickable prototype. So there's some like great examples of like zero code prototypes that you can get huge value out of. But again, you're sharpening your value prop, you're looking for patterns, and you have to be willing to tack left and right and pivot. And the best way to describe a pivot is, just to make sure you understand the definition of the word, is just like in basketball, where you keep 1 foot on the ground and you change, you pivot around that 1 foot. So anyone who's a basketball fan, you can't, if you pick up both feet, if you're not dribbling and you pick up both feet, that's traveling, it's a foul, and you lose the ball. But what you can do is you can keep 1 foot on the ground and pivot and turn around on that foot. But the core is that 1 foot's on the ground. So the analogy to product is you're not dramatically changing the business. That's a restart. So when my last company was a travel company, this is a B2B SaaS product. That's not a pivot. That's a complete restart. What a pivot is going from, the value prop is consolidation of feedback to a faster way to test key assumptions, right? So they're related, they're close. A lot of the core principles and pain point are related. So that's a slight pivot. And so we put out some things, we kept iterating, and then we got our first customer, and paying customer. And in my opinion, you have nothing until you have a paying customer. Someone who's willing to say, beyond just I'll take a meeting, I'm actually willing to give you money, and I've gone to my boss to get budget approval to give you money for the solution. Now, funny enough, that person's not a customer anymore, because we pivoted again, and found that the solution that he paid for was not one that many people actually wanted. And so, but we started to feel good about that we were, as a team, because we got actually some revenue, and someone actually said, I'm willing to pay for that. And so throughout this process, as we were learning and we were kind of iterating and pivoting, again, the key thing, I can't stress this enough, you have to stay closely with your customers. You have to get over this concern around sales and interacting with customers. Let your customers tell you that you're calling them or emailing them too much, right? I mean, take them out to dinner. Take them out to meet with them. Buy them lunch or breakfast or something. Stay close to them, because that's going to help you get through the bugs. That's going to help you get through the bad things. That's going to keep them engaged with you, even though the product isn't keeping them engaged, right? And that's really, really, really important, because it's so hard. You work so hard to get people bought into your vision that losing them is really, really hard. And if all they have to do is interact with you is with a product that's clearly not ready yet, then you're going to lose them. But if they believe in your vision as a founder, they believe that you're going to solve this problem that's important to them, that you validate is important to them, people will stick with you. They'll go through the iteration with you because they think it's interesting and they think it's cool and they think it's inspirational, that you're trying to work your butt off to solve a real problem for them. That you're trying really hard, you have your whole team trying really hard to solve a problem that they have and that they don't have a solution for. But it's relationship based, okay? And you have to be comfortable with that. So as we were going through this, we anyone who has kids, this is Handy Mandy, and he has a famous saying is, can we build that? Yes, we can.
Before you jump to the Handy Mandy, I got another question from Anna from Brooklyn, and one of her questions, especially I think it might be particularly relevant since you're talking about build number 2. Anna's question is, what tools have you used for prototyping?
At the time, we weren't really conversant in prototyping, and we just did real quick stuff in HTML that didn't even have a back end. It was just thrown together in HTML. Funny enough, now a huge part of our solution is actually a quick prototyping tool or integration with InVision and Axure. So Invalidately, by next week, you'll be able to actually import your InVision app prototypes or your Axure prototypes or your Balsamics or whatever it is. Right now, we also have the ability to import your Balsamic prototypes and make them clickable and do all that type of stuff. But I wasn't fully aware of that capability at this time, so we were just throwing together quick HTML things.
Are there other tools that you've used for prototyping?
No, those three are the ones. So we built the wireframes in Balsamic. We use Vision or to make them clickable. Now we use Validately to make them clickable. But I understand Vision and Axure are by far the two things that most of my customers use. There are two different types of prototyping tools. InVision is like a quick prototyping thing. It's got some slick interactions and it's very, very nicely visually done. And it's good for mobile. But it's not like a super advanced. Axure, AXURE, is like a crazy advanced prototyping thing. They've got a lot of on-screen interactions that you can do that really mimic HTML. So what if you coded it. So those are two the most common ones that we see in our customers.
Cool. Feel free to continue.
Okay, so we went through all this thing. We were looking for patterns. We were pivoting. We were kind of adjusting and really tightening our value prop. I was staying close to the customers the whole time, and during that time, the team was working really hard to kind of deliver on what we thought the right solution was, and that basically shut down all new sales and marketing for the summertime. We were just working with a core group of customers. So a founder, a friend of mine who is an exceptional founder, has a saying, 550, 500, and that's the stages of your company and your customer base. And so, and you're a startup. This is for B2B. You can probably scale it a little bit for consumer. When you're a startup B2B company, you want to get, the first thing you want to get is 5 customers that are really working with you that within an archetype. And 5 is not, it could be 7 or 10 or whatever, but that really within an archetype need this problem solved and working with you. Okay, now the key thing is within an archetype, because if they're spread out over different archetypes, you might be building custom solutions for one-off people. You don't want to build custom solutions. Everything has to be scalable, but you want to basically make sure that you can nail an archetype. And if you hit 5 or 10 customers that within an archetype that really need this solution, you've nailed it. You've nailed it. Okay, and then you scale it to 50, and then and you do everything manually with the first 5, and then you scale it to 50, and then you start automating things, and then you say, okay, now we got to raise more money to scale it to 500 and really build a business. So here we were working on the 5. Really, it was more like 7, but they were within the same archetype and trying to deliver a solution. And so this is the solution that we delivered. Let me actually play this here. Tell me if you guys can't hear this for some reason.
The process of testing a feature before it is coded is far too expensive and time-consuming. Should there be an easy way to validate a feature before writing a single line of code? Well, now there is. ProdThink is the faster, easier way for product teams to iterate on features and centralize user feedback. ProdThink lets you recruit users to try out new features with automated in-product messages and automatically records their on-screen interactions with live sites, clickable designs, or wireframes, so you can play back the user's experience when it's convenient for you. Ask survey questions and use ProdThink's powerful analysis tools to focus on the most valuable features and reduce inbound requests by enabling stakeholders to vote for key features or suggest others. Successful product teams use ProdThink to quickly and painlessly move from idea to sprint. You should too.
Okay, that makes sense?
Yeah, we were able to see it.
Okay, great. So what you'll see is, is that you can call it a pivot or tightening of the value prop or iteration or whatever you want, but the solution that we were delivering was very, very different and very, very advanced from those early solutions, right? So remember, this was just a single page that you can have a video or pictures or something and ask questions, okay? And then this was a little bit more of, you had a survey functionality and you could also consolidate notes and stuff like that, and emails and stuff like that. Okay, and then we come out with this other thing, which if you remember from the video, you can recruit customers. Now, why did we build that feature? Okay, it wasn't even a concept in my mind at the time, but when I heard it over and over and over and over and over and over and over from our customers as we were putting the prototypes in front of them, and one of the pain points we kept hearing from product teams was, yeah, I love all that. That sounds great. But I don't really have people sitting off the shelf like ready to try prototypes or try new features. So how do I get those people? And people never really described the solution. Some people kind of danced around it, but we kept hearing the pattern of the need, and so we built a solution. Well, you have an in-app or in-product recruit widget that you can find. You can actually recruit people to try a new feature. Okay. And then we have the on-screen recording piece, right? Now that was a tremendous amount of work trying to figure. And why did we build that? Because no one said I needed on-screen recording. What they said was, I need to be able to see how people are doing what they're doing, not what they say they're going to do. So there's some value to getting survey questions, but really what the value is actually watching people try my prototype and seeing what they do. And we learned this firsthand. We agreed. And so then the question is, okay, how do I do that in a scalable way? And there's also some other requirements. So some of the requirements are, because there's like usertesting.com out there, but that's not really customers. That's just random panel base that do usability, not necessarily demand, right? So user testing doesn't give you feedback on demand; it gives you feedback on usability, which is not what I'm testing in this phase. What I'm testing is demand. So I need to be able to test on people who are real customers. And so how do I do that? And so that was the genesis of the recruit and the genesis of the recording. But one of the key things is user testing tech. We actually looked to APIs to see if we could actually use an API instead of build it. And what we found was that all the other services out there that had screen recording require a big, heavy download. There's a process you have to go through to actually record your screen. You have to download something. It's a big file. You have to go through that whole process of like first downloading, then opening the zip file, then running it, and it takes 10 minutes or so, and it just looks scary, and it made me uncomfortable doing it. And I was doing research for my own company, and I didn't even want to do it. And I was just like, that's just a non-starter. Our screen recording has to work without any plugins or downloads or anything like that. As a matter of fact, it's even better if the end user doesn't even know their test is being recorded, because then it's natural. So I've become a big believer that when you're testing something, the thing you want to do is you want to actually test in the most realistic, natural environment as possible. Okay, and so what does that mean? There's the old famous Starbucks test, right, where you go into a Starbucks with a prototype and you sit in front of the person and you let them play with the prototype and you ask them a whole bunch of questions. Well, I think there's some value in that, but I'm probably on the outliers of product management where I say I think that is actually a complete waste of time, the Starbucks test. And the reason why is because when your customers are using your product, you're not sitting there in front of them. And so it's not actually realistic. And I'll tell you, I've tried Starbucks tests before, and I've tried in-person testing, and I'll tell you that I felt like people were trying to give me the answers that they thought I wanted to hear, because people don't like conflict. So when they would give me an answer that was just not good, they would see a blank stare or me holding back my frustration, and then they would change it, and they would give me the answers that I wanted to hear. And I was just like, you know what? This is not productive. I'm not learning anything, because there's this uncomfort level with someone looking over, because they would look over. Is that right, or is that acceptable, or is that cool? And I'm like, well, this is just a test. It is what it is. But people were looking for acceptance when you're sitting there in front of them. So it had to work remotely without them even knowing it was a test, and in the most realistic scenario. So that means no plugins. So that was a huge amount of technology built. But it only came from the solution. Okay, the elegance of the solution only came from talking to customers. And so we built a prototyping piece. Why did we build a prototyping piece? Because many customers weren't asked, like for example, the person who asked that question on prototype, that she might be looking for a prototype. She might not even have a solution yet. So the fact that we have a solution, it's basic, but it's a solution, and we give you the ability, if you do have other solutions that are a little bit more advanced, what that does is it solves the underlying pain point that people were said from the beginning, which is I have all these tools in one place, all over the place. So what we did in providing this end-to-end solution was actually incorporating the tools all into one place, but not doing it in a way that made you have to copy and paste stuff in. It did it in a way that actually provided the solution within our product. So people said, I wanted to recruit people, and I wanted to have the people I recruited all in one place. Well, if you heard that, you might think, well, why not just give them a way to import the people they recruited, right? Import emails, recruited emails, and stuff like that. But that didn't really solve the problem. The problem is it was that the underlying process was a lot of work, and then adding on top the consolidation was even more work. So what they really wanted was a better way that automatically imported and captured it, but an easier way to than what they're doing right now to actually do the recruiting. Okay, and if you ask people how they were doing recruiting for testers, it was very much a very manual, email-based. I would send emails to our customers, and I would schedule meetings, and then they would come into our office, and I would record their screens, and I would watch what they did, and I would upload them into a wiki, and that's the best practice for how people were testing. So then we relaunched in October of 2013, and we were all excited, and of course it was crickets because we had the group of 8 to 10 companies who would get in, but like all the other people who we'd interviewed weren't sitting around waiting for us to solve all the problems for them. So it took a little while to kind of get that momentum back up and get going, and then unfortunately we ran into Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's Eve and all this stuff, and so everything kind of slowed down. But then people started coming in January and February of this year, and some in Q4, and we started finding roadblocks. And this is what happens, right? When you do this, right? And it's scary because you work so hard to get these guys into the product, and then they find something, a bug or something like that. And what I found is that it comes back to the relationship thing. If you're earnest and you're open with your customers, and you work real hard and you solve bugs really quickly, and you show them that you're trying really hard to kind of solve this problem and really make it work, people will give you some latitude. So relationships are really, really important. But you got to just keep figuring out blockers. And there are some blockers that you don't know, you won't know unless you actively reach out to those customers who didn't convert and find out why. Pay them $25 for an interview. Find ways to talk to them and figure out why they're not converting. And we just did this recently, and we found some amazing things I would never have even thought of. So let me give you a good example. One of our features is that you can. So in addition to recruiting customers, which requires a little script you have to add to your thing. Some people want to get started without having to add that script, so we have a feature where you can just email surveys to people, whether it's internal or external, prototypes to people. Well, what was a blocker there is that they had to be able to use our email functionality, they had to upload their customer lists or customers or a customer list into our system, and they had to get approval for it, and they never heard of ProdThink at the time. And so what they really wanted was just a link that they can pull into their own email client and send their emails out that actually did this prototype testing and capturing and stuff like that. They loved the solution. They just didn't want to upload their thing. So that little thing, right? And by the way, that feature for us to do a link versus email is like a day's development time. It's like nothing. We're going to bang it out next week. But like, literally, that was a blocker for several customers, big companies, from using our product and like generating revenue. And we worked really hard to convert them. And the only reason I found that out was because I literally reached back out and said, "Well, tell me, why are you not using the product?" So you got to be really, really, really aggressive in trying to find out what the blockers are. Ask customers, "Why are you not using our product?" Like, you seemed really excited when we showed you the demo. And you said you're going to start using it, but you haven't started. What is there something that we've done? Is there something in the product we can fix? Like, what's the issue? And oftentimes they'll tell you. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes you just lose them and that's it. But sometimes, oftentimes they'll tell you, and then if they tell you, it probably affected many other people too. So then the last thing here is then we relaunched. Okay, we basically learned all these things. We learned that the UI was not good enough. We did hear consistently from people that even in our 2.0 launch, we used Bootstrap, Twitter Bootstrap, which helped good, but it wasn't very visually appealing. And people said it felt like a weaker product because it wasn't visually done nice. Even though it solved the problem, it just felt like an alpha, like a beta product, and they wanted something a little bit forward. And so we added some nice visual designs. Now is the time that we had validated the use case, we had validated the pain point, we had validated the solutions, the features. Now was the time to add in the visual design, make it look slick and interactive and fun, and add in some of the fun things, and more visually appealing. And we actually also rebranded at the same time. We literally just launched March 1st what we call our 3.0. We rebranded from ProdThink to Validately, which I think more accurately reflects what our product does. We basically help you validate. Our value statement is test a feature before you code it, A/B test designs and prototypes. Throughout this process, we found that our customers were not just product managers, they were also designers and usability people who work very closely with the product team. And so we wanted a brand that reflected that, as reflected our thing, and one of the things we also found is that if our customers were designers and much more visual, those are the people who are having a real problem also with the visuals of our product. So we added the visual design, we cleaned it up, we actually deleted about 50% of our code, so we actually cut back a ton of features that were in 2.0 into 3.0. And just really focused on the most important features and a clean design. And so we just relaunched that, and the feedback's been phenomenal so far. People are really excited about it, and people have emailed like, "This looks great," and etc. So last slide is these are, like I said, best practices. I think these are my suggestions. I don't want to pass myself off as an expert. I'm just an entrepreneur that thinks a lot about this, and this is my best suggestions. Require commitment from a customer at every phase. If you're not getting a commitment from a customer, don't just assume that what they said is valid. Back that statement up with a request for a commitment, and there's the 3 commitments. Confirm your pricing as you're going through this. Make sure that you don't think. I tell many times I speak to an entrepreneur who's like, we have about a bunch of beta customers who are trying our product, and I was like, well, they paying? No, they're not paying. We're giving it for free, but their time's really important. Okay, that's great. Have you talked about pricing with them? No, not yet. You haven't talked about pricing? They have no idea what you're going to charge them. Like, what if you're thinking $5,000 a month and they're thinking $250 a month? That's a problem. You should have figured that out really quickly, because if you don't, it doesn't matter how good your product is. It's like maybe they just don't have budget, or they just don't see this as a problem that's worth $5,000 a month. So you got to confirm pricing. Continuous deployment. We don't do sprints. We do continuous deployment. You create a feature, you fix something, you push it, right? I'm a big believer in that for a number of reasons. I think developers get much more sense of ownership. I think it's much faster iteration, more rapid iteration in the product. Customers can see things faster. There's less focus on these big deliverables at the end of a sprint. So I like that. Don't worry about visual design at first. Do focus on UX. Visual design early on. It doesn't matter how good something looks if it's not the right solution, if it's not the right feature. It doesn't mind. And people will tell you, this is cool. It's kind of ugly, but it's cool. Like this solves a problem for me. And then you can always add in visual design later on. But if you do the visual design before you validate the solution, you're going to overbuild, and it's going to take too much time. Listen for patterns and then build, not the other way around. Don't build and then test for patterns. Literally try to look for consistency of a message and patterns, and then build. And the last statement is delete code as you go through. I'm a big believer in delete code. Don't comment stuff out. Don't say, well, there might be 1 or 2 companies that like use a feature, so let's leave it in because we don't want to upset them. Like, they'll get over it. And the most important thing you can do is keep a clean code base, a clean product. And what ends up happening is if you leave these legacy features in, things get, they invariably break. Inevitably break, and then you're spending your time fixing these features that none of your customers even use anyways, maybe a small percentage of your customers use anyways, just because you didn't have the fortitude to actually delete a feature even though it was built, which is a sunk cost. So I'm a big believer in refactoring and keeping a clean code base and deleting stuff and just explaining to customers if they complain about it, well, no one was using it, and instrument the product so you know what people are actually using and what they're not. That's it. That's my best advice.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Stephen, and everyone else who joined us. And who are still joining us through the live stream, so we've had a very, very good turnout. And also, everyone, thank you for sticking with us through a lot of the glitches. As always, the presentation will be posted to our SlideShare channel. And again, thank you to our speaker, Stephen Cohn, founder and CEO of the newly named Validately, for today's discussion on using Lean. Big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy, and to everyone else who joined us today on the Product Mentor. And as always, don't forget, if you're interested in also being a product mentor like Stephen and many of the others who have come before him doing similar live streams, definitely go to theproductmentor.com and sign up today. We'd definitely love to get mentors, and we accept mentors and mentees from all over the world. We've got a great program, a lot of great mentors, a lot of great mentees. The new session is starting up pretty soon. And also, if you're looking for a product job or looking for a great product person, we have a free job board for all kinds of product people. It's been primarily run for the product group, but it works for all around the world as well. And that you can do theproductjobs.com. And once again, thanks for joining us. I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.